choice. And I want you to sit with that word, choice. We all have a choice, and that is bringing back our power. And when you really allow yourself to sit with that word choice, maybe it doesn't feel like power right now. Maybe choice feels out of reach. Maybe choice feels like it's not for you. But I want to be that reminder for each woman that's listening right now is that you do have a choice to choose yourself, a choice to use your voice.
Hello, and welcome to the Ambitious Women of Color podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Lynn Rojas. In this episode, we're talking about pivoting, not as a failure, but as a choice. My guest is Iris Canela, a Latina life coach who helps ambitious women of color live with intention and rise without losing themselves. We're covering how to make your next move rooted in self-trust, why career and life aren't meant to be linear, and how to honor what you actually want without guilt. If you've been waiting for permission to change direction, this is it. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I've had Iris here. I'm so excited to have you here, Iris.
Thank you for having me. I feel super duper honored to be here. So thank you again for having me.
Of course. And I was actually on Edie's podcast last year. So I'm excited to now have her and invite her to the Ambitious Women of Color podcast. So before we get started and diving into today's topic and your story, of course, I wanted for us to start with our signature question for the podcast. What is one thing you refuse to sacrifice for your career?
My freedom. I refuse to sacrifice my freedom. I love it so much. I love having the ability to have a choice on what I want to do in my day and just having my autonomy to be who I want to be at work. So that's what I won't sacrifice.
That's so important. For me as well, having that flexibility of being able to make choices about your life and not just what is told to you or not just because that is the way that things need to be done. And I feel like a lot of people miss that and don't realize that there should be flexibility. And even if you have a demanding career, there are still ways that you can be able to create the space and time in your life for the things that are important for you. So if you're in a situation where that is not something that's possible, yes, of course, maybe some of us have careers that allow us for more flexibility and freedom, but that is something that you can reassess if that's the path that you want to be, if it doesn't allow you to be able to have that freedom, because it's so important to be able to have choices and things that you can do that are not going to limit you from living the life that you want to live.
100%, girl, which is perfect because we're about to go into it very deep.
Yes. Yes. All right. So a little level setting for people to get to know who you are. You're a Latina coach and podcaster, and you help high achieving women of color and Latinas rise without losing themselves, own their truth, and live with intention. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is pivoting, because I think so many of our clients are feeling stuck in that belief that their career and life has to be linear and it has to go a certain way. And there's a certain steps that you need to do. But when they hit a wall or they're in a place that they're either stuck, they're unfulfilled or unhappy, or they realize that's not what they want to do, or whatever situation it is, the idea of even changing directions or even assessing if this is what you wanted to do. And I know that we're going to dive into that. And just
Okay.
little story for everyone. I was pre-law, and growing up, I thought, I was going to be a lawyer. And that is the whole path that I took, from I think middle school to college. I majored in political science and international studies. And it was a moment in my junior year of college that I realized this is not the path. And then you feel like I've spent so many years going towards this. So if I'm not doing this, does that mean that I failed? Knowing that we're going to hit a time in our lives where everything we either been working towards or everything we thought we should be doing was the way to go. But then there's going to be a moment where you assess whether or not that's the direction you want to take without feeling like you're failing or wasting your time. Like you said, owning your truth and owning your intentions and owning your values and your purpose, and then making a decision that's aligned with that instead of what you think you should or what society has told you that you need to do. So I wanted to start with that little story, but I know we're going to dive deeper into what you see. And how you've experienced this in your own life and your career.
That's so good. I wanted to first honor that version of you because I think many of us, when we try to embrace the pivoter identity that many of us carry, by the way, it's not just for the people that seem to be lucky or the people that just do it so naturally. Pivoting is a skill. And
Mhm.
I know that most people, we don't talk about that, but I want to honor that version of you going back to that because pivoting doesn't just happen one time in our lives. It's going to happen multiple times. And I think that many of us, especially as ambitious high achievers, we want to get it right the first time
Mhm.
because of the way that we grew up, because of the way that our environment was, the way that society sets us up, and especially as women in the stage that we live in nowadays, where we're challenged and we're told that we don't have choices. We feel like we have to stay stuck in this linear path, and we're sold this idea de que la vida is like if you graduate, then you're going to get a great job. And if you get a great job, you're
Mhm.
going to get married. And if you get married, then you're going to have the house. And then your life is just going to be perfect. You're going to have everything. And that is a lie. That's BS that's been sold to us and that many of us have believed, especially as first generation women of color. And that
Yes.
sucks. And many of us, we get our hopes very high and we think safety comes from that. And then we get disappointed when it doesn't happen. And so when you shared your story, I also have had a similar story with that, where my pivoting story started from also when I was in college, when I decided to take the track of, oh, I'm going to be a communicative disorders and sciences like major, which is honestly the fanciest way to just say speech therapist, because from a young age, I knew that I wanted to help people with their voices, with their speech. And that dream, when graduation came and I was waiting to see what grad school accepted me and I was waitlisted to all of them, I was like, oh my gosh, what is the path now? Like, where do I go? And that's when teaching came in. And a lot of people don't know that about me, but they're like, oh, you must have known that you wanted to be a teacher your whole life. And I'm like, that actually was not the dream. That was not the original dream at all. But the door opened to that. And I remember taking it in that moment because I was like, it must be like a sign. It must be
Mhm.
God leading me in this way. And so I took it and there's no regrets because that pivot shaped a lot of who I am today. And so going into that, many of us are probably also assessing right now, like, okay, when did that pivoting moment start for me? And if you're doing that right now, I applaud you because many of us, we don't take the time to actually understand where in our lives have we had to either shift and change and how most importantly how it feels. Because if I'm honest, when I look back at that moment, like you said, Jessica, when you looked at your moment of like how you worked so much in pre-law and you thought, okay, like I'm gonna do this is gonna be the thing, and then the plan pivot, you feel like a failure in the moment. And
Mhm.
that I want to honor because it's a feeling that we're all going to feel. We're going to feel like failures. We're going to feel like we aren't enough. Maybe we did something wrong. Is there something wrong with me? And we go into the internal world of like, is it me? Am I the
Yeah.
problem?
You have like an
When
identity crisis. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we do. And that is a natural thing that I also want to talk about even louder more than ever, because those are the things that we as women, we carry in silence. And I don't want us to carry that in silence anymore. And a lot of us, we push harder. We overprove. We work 10 times harder. We want to make it seem like it was all worth it. And that's something that I also want to provide more grace and compassion, because the pivot doesn't mean that we failed. The pivot just means realignment. Realignment to take us to a different path to understand who we need to become. And in the moment, the answers will not be clear. And I think that's why more and more of us, we get scared in the moment because we're like, but I want the control. I want the answers. I want the clear path that's going to take me to where I want to go and where it all feels worth it. But that's where I also kind of want to digest it a little bit of like, okay,
Yeah.
what does worth it even mean for a lot of us? And so if you find yourself in that crossroad of pivoting or deciding of, should I decide to go this way or that way? I want to honor all those feelings because those feelings are so valid. And this platform that you're using right now, I hope it's a place for people to feel the permission to feel everything, not ignore it, not push it under the rug, but feel it. Because in order to embrace the pivot, we have to feel it. We have to acknowledge where we're at and be honest about that reality. Because guess what? Kind of like what you said earlier about what you asked me about, what I'm not willing to sacrifice. And it's my freedom. It's the ability to have choices. And a pivot is a choice. So when
Yeah.
you think of that as a whole, you're like, oh, shoot, I actually have more control for myself of where I want to go with my life. And I have power. I reclaim power, most
Yes, that's
importantly.
what I was gonna say, the power. It's like you are the one that gets to control where your life goes and the direction that it goes. And going more deeper into, like you said, going within, that is what's going to help you guide what's the next decision, because then you can really assess, like, my next decision needs to be something that is aligned with who I am. It's aligned with my values. It's aligned with what I want in my life. One of the things that I always think about in these situations is that whole idea of I've invested so much time and I've invested so much money and energy into either this degree or career or just path in general, right? And then you feel like if I change it now, then I've wasted all these years, all this energy, all this money, all this, like, everything that I put. So then oftentimes it just keeps people there because they're like, if I make a change, then I'm admitting failure. I'm admitting that I couldn't handle it or this wasn't for me, but in a negative way, not admitting, like, hey, I can change my mind. This could no longer have the purpose. And maybe when you went into that path, it had meaning and you had a mission or purpose, but that can also change. And know that like happened to you. Like you said, you pivoted into education and then you pivoted out of education.
Yeah.
I'm sure that maybe when you were in education, you loved it. And when you left, there had to be a reason, but doesn't mean that the path that you were on was the wrong one and that going into education was the wrong move. But would love to also, like, share that if you want to talk about, like, maybe the things that were going through your mind of when you were deciding whether or not you should leave education. And maybe if you were falling into that sunk cost fallacy as well.
No, and that's a good one. And when I think back to those moments of when I taught, like, for example, going back to what we just explained, like when I got that clear pathway that the doors open for teaching. And at the moment, I didn't understand if this was really the move. And I took the chance anyways, because I'm like, if this door opened, it's for a reason, right? And I'm so glad that I did because those 8+ years that I was in teaching, it showed a different side of me that I would have never learned about myself if I wasn't in that space. The ability of what people saw in me, of where they were like, wow, you're so good at what you do, to the lives that you impact on a daily. Because if you are a teacher, an educator, or anybody that's in a provider like service role, you
Hmm.
know that you're wearing multiple hats daily. And getting in front of the classroom, you learn to public speak. And that is something that I always knew that I was really good at. But man, when you're teaching, and especially in the world that I was in, because I was a special education teacher working with students who had very different behaviors, learning styles, and all the things, right? And they come in different levels of how they express themselves,
Hmm.
some nonverbal to very verbal. So I had such a different environment from your typical day to day teacher, but that also required for me to learn how to become adaptable because lesson plans came out the window. Like every day was the challenge of like, how can I be more creative with these students? How can I help them engage? How can I do all these things even when the lesson plan doesn't go according to the plan? And
Hmm.
without that, without me realizing it at that moment, I was learning how to also surrender. I was learning how to just be okay with flexibility, with adapting when change had to occur and that things don't always have to be perfect. And I'm so grateful for those moments because impacting those students' lives, their families, to teaching my staff members and learning how to work with people in a collaborative way, to work with all types of different service providers, to different lawyers who came up into those meetings and how to address it with professionalism and also learn how to connect in a human manner. All of that came from teaching. And I'm so grateful for that, as I mentioned that, because when I look back at that, those are my strengths that I carry now into the next thing that I go to. But in the moment, I didn't realize that because I remember when it was time to get out of teaching, I did have something very severe happen to me in a classroom with a particular student that had me reassess everything in the sense
Hmm.
of education and the political systems within that, the way that I was also outgrowing something that I used to really love and that I used to really embrace. And I felt this deeper calling of like, I'm meant for more. But I also felt selfish in the moment to think that
Hmm.
because I'm like, well, I'm in a job where I'm doing meaningful impact every single day. But I also was getting tired because during that time when COVID hit, I saw a different lifestyle where we were where we were able to give the ability to work from home. And I really like that freedom where I was like, oh, wait, I can log onto the computer. I can do all these things, still create meaningful impact, still teach in the ways that I need to. And I also get to just be at home. I can run errands. I can do all these different things. And I felt like I had more time. And I really love that. So things did shift, as you mentioned. Like I got to reassess what was important to me in that moment because I was no
Mhm.
longer that fresh out of college, still young mindset where I was like, okay, I like this world. Like, I like going to clock into a 9 to 5. That was like the normal
Mhm.
of back then. But then when I was shown another world, what was possible, I was like, my whole mind was like mind blown. And I was like, whoa, wait, there's actually more choices. Like, I have more to choose from. And in that time, it wasn't overwhelming. If anything, it felt exciting. I was like, dude, I want this. I want it so bad, but how do I make it happen? Because when I had to go back to work in person, it was still really great. But that feeling of I want more got louder. It didn't get softer. It got so loud to the point where I was like, there was moments where it felt really hard to go to work, where I had to really like hype myself up. But in the moments, like the impact wasn't feeling as deep as I wanted to. And again, that selfishness of feeling guilty and, you know, feeling indecisive of whether or not, like, should I leave? Like, I have it so good. And in that moment, when I even look back, like, I was getting paid really well for being a teacher in the Bay Area because I used to live in California.
Mhm.
So I was really assessing all that for safety reasons because I was like, I'm
Yeah.
tenured, I have all the benefits, I get paid really well, I have my own apartment. Like life was really good, you guys, from the outside, but from the inside, I wanted more. And that feeling is scary of wanting more because we are told, especially as first generation Latinas, that hey, like when you have that more, your job is to stay there. It's to perform and be good at that for the rest of your life because that's where your security comes through. And I had to really question that belief of whether or not that was really true for me now. And that was the hardest thing to really take the time to sit down and really feel that not only in my mind, because when we're ambitious women, we stay living up here in our mind so much. But this time I had to tap
Mhm.
into my heart, which is something that we're not told to do. And when I felt my heart, when I felt my spirit, I was like, this isn't it. I'm forcing myself. And do I really want to live a life where I'm forcing myself to show up every day, even when the outside things on paper look amazing? And I chose to risk it. I chose to bet on myself that I don't know what more is just yet, but all I know is that I like the taste of freedom. I like the taste of flexibility. I like the taste of having more choices and not having to bring work every single day at home and trying to be creative with these lesson plans, and that knowing that the system of education can replace me at any time, or that I'm just another body in the classroom that if something happens to me, I'm replaceable. And I didn't like that because at the end of the day, I was like, do I really have a choice or am I a prison to my own cage? Like, I'm
Mhm.
showing up to work feeling that way. And if you ask me, that's not choice. If anything, that's fear speaking loud and control disguised as safety. And I didn't want that. I broke out of that narrative, but it takes a lot of work to be honest. I think that's where I'm trying to lead with all of this. It's like,
Mhm.
as I really assess what happened the moment that I went into teaching to loving it and then deciding that something changed and that I wanted more, being honest with that response was the hardest thing that I had to do. And feeling all the rest of the feelings that I felt, feeling selfish, feeling guilty, feeling that I needed to be grateful. All of that came into the mix. But when I really like dissect it and when I really look at the root, I'm like, man, like it was just more than that. It was more of like, at the end of the day, I don't want that anymore. And that's okay. Like it's okay to admit that out loud. So if anybody's in that space of you started off in a career, in a relationship, and maybe a lifestyle that you thought like, oh, I love running, but I no longer love running anymore. And I'm used to doing all these clubs or como sea, because it can bleed into different parts of your
Mhm.
life. But if you find yourself that what once was a blessing is no longer a blessing, is not it anymore, and that you want more, it's okay to admit it. It's okay to be honest and just say, I want more. I want different. And I'm going to choose that different for me. And even as I say that, there is still excitement and fear that comes up in my body because it's not always easy. And I want to acknowledge that it's not easy, but it's one of the things that we as high ambitious women of color and Latinas, we need to allow ourselves to be more honest and create space to be more honest with what we want and accept it and honor it. But I'm gonna pause there, amiga. Let's see, because I feel like you have so much to say.
No, it's just like everything. You had so many moments. First of all, I'm just so proud of you for like it really takes so much self-love to do what you did because there were so many things that you said, like having everything in the outside look like the perfect life or the perfect plan for you. And then realizing that that's not what you want. And one of the things that I've seen a lot, and like I've experienced this as well in the past, is that we're so disconnected with ourselves that we don't know ourselves. We don't know what we really want. When you've been raised in an environment and conditioned, like you need to hustle to get to success, to get out of the situations. Like for me, I grew up in South Central LA. So my education was like my vehicle out. And out of, the poverty, out of that environment. And I knew that there was more to life for me and that I was destined for more. So my education and having a career was my number one priority. So that's why I shared the whole, like me being a lawyer, that was like part of my identity that I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm doing everything to do that. And I did everything in my youth and then getting to college and then I had that identity crisis and I didn't know what I wanted. And I went through, a few years of doing like nonprofit work and doing like AmeriCorps program, doing internships, doing things to like really understand like what is it that I want to do. And while I was going through that, I'm not going to lie, I felt like a failure. I felt like I had spent all these years working towards something and now I don't even know what I want. And the whole not knowing what I wanted in life, like, made me feel, like, ashamed that, like, I've spent all these years thinking that I was doing this thing. What if I was just wasting them and now I don't even know what I wanna do in life? And, like, eventually I found, like, that I really loved public health, and that is it is the career that I have now, but those years of trying to figure out what is it, and then trying to understand who am I, because again, like I was so focused in the goals and so focused and the next step and the next step and the next step that I never knew who I was or what I wanted or what made me happy. And I think that that's like a lot of people, especially women of color, and I know in our community, like we go through life just taking the next step and going towards the next goal and the next goal and the next goal and the next goal, that we either forget who we are or we don't even know who we are in the first place.
And
So
that
the
is so
fact that
deep.
the fact that you had those moments where you're like, okay, this is not what I want, even if to the world it's like I'm successful, like I made it. This is not what I want. And making that decision to go another path, that takes a lot of courage because you left like everything that you were working so hard for and it didn't have meaning anymore. But like to really like make that decision, you had to like understand who you were at the core and what was important to you. That sounds simple to say, but sometimes even like now, people in their 30s, 40s don't know what they want, don't know who they are. So how would you support somebody going through that? Or how would you speak to those women who maybe this is the first time they're hearing their intuition, or maybe this is the first time they're hearing their inner self or their higher self, realizing that they're in a path that no longer makes them happy and it's okay to like listen to it. And like you said, that being honest with yourself is so hard
It
when
is.
you've been
It's what
conditioned to go a certain way.
100%. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. It is so hard, but I also wanna be the light at the end of the tunnel where it's like, it is still possible because going back to even the beginning of our discussion, choice. Now, I want you to sit with that word, choice. We all have a choice, and that is bringing back our power. And when you really allow yourself to sit with that word choice, maybe it doesn't feel like power right now. Maybe choice feels out of reach. Maybe choice feels like it's not for you. But I want to be that reminder for each woman that's listening right now is that you do have a choice to choose yourself, a choice to use your voice, a choice to use your intuition. Because let me be a reminder to each woman here today is that you are a creator. You were designed to be a creator, and creators create beautiful things from their inner being, from their intuition, from trusting their heart, from connecting with their whole entire body, not just our minds. So if you're in a place where you're just here and living in this space, I want to invite you to just, I know for some of us, maybe like we hear nervous system work and somatic and all that and being like connected to your body. And so many of us are like, pero chingado iris, like, I don't know how to connect with my body. Like, how do I do that? And I'm going to take it somewhere simpler because this is something that we can all connect to. You woke up this morning and you have a heart. And right now, because you are alive, you do have that beautiful heartbeat that's happening in this very moment. So if you can't connect with the senses or whatever not, just connect here for a moment. And I want you to really ask yourself, like, what do I really want? What do I really need? Without anything else of over explaining of like, pero hice esto. No, no, no. Like, we're coming from here to here, which is our head to our mind. Like, I want you to just put your hands over your heart and really feel it. And if you're at home, if you are driving, which please do this when you're at home, okay? But if you're home, if you're in a place where you can really do this practice right now, really just feel into your heart. You feel the heartbeat and really ask yourself when you're in this place where you're a little more at peace, when you're more grounded. If you feel a little nervous, it's okay to feel that because it's the first time that you're connecting with you. And just like how we take the time to build relationship with other people, if you're married with your partner or if you're not married to your partner, all right, we give so much to the world, but this is the moment in time where you need to give to yourself. Así como you put everybody else first, in this very moment, I am asking you to be selfish, to put yourself first, to take the time to actually dismantle that belief of if I put myself first, I'm selfish. No, no, no. Like here, we're going to chop it up, we're going to cut it up, and we're going to throw it away. And we're going to start actually rewriting that for ourselves of, I deserve to put myself first. I deserve to design a life that I truly love, not from just the outside, but also from the inside. And if it requires me to connect with myself for the first time, or maybe this is something that you haven't done in a while, I invite you to do that again and say, I'm worth feeling connected to. I deserve to tap into my heart. I deserve to love me and to create whatever I want. Because when I take care of me, then I can do everything else for everybody else around me because I have more capacity. So it's something that I really want to remind us women because we don't remind ourselves enough. And especially if you're that ambitious woman, or even if you're just that stay at home mom right now, whatever it is that your life looks like right now, I don't care. It's like allow yourself to just make the time, the sacred time to just be connected to you, build relationship with you. And I know that this sounds easier said than done, but it's going to take time. And I know a lot of us, we don't want to hear that because we want a quick fix. But this is going to be something that I am going to stretch all of us and invite all of us that get for the rest of the year, maybe just for this week, give yourself 5 minutes every day to just connect with your heart and ask, what do I need? What do I really want? And that's a good place to start because that's where you're creating room for honesty, for acceptance, for truth. And when you do that, that's how you start strengthening that foundation of trust, self-trust, because it's more than even just self-love. It's self-trust because when women trust themselves, we will take the leaps that we need. We will go into the path that we need to take, but we need to trust ourselves because it goes back to what we were told. So many of us, we want control, but remember, control is a pretty way. It's a pretty like secret design that when you take away that word control, it's actually fear. So when we're deciding from a place of fear, we're not creating a life that we love. We're creating a life that feels comfortable for others and not for ourselves. And we're breaking that today because we deserve to live in truth. We deserve to live with what we want. And that's going to evolve every time. So there's so many layers that I want to go into that because gosh, like my mind's going all over the place. And for those of you who are like, Edie's, it must have been so easy for you. It was so good. No, girls, like it took me time too. What you don't see right now is that behind the scenes, when I decided to leave my career back in February of 2022, I was doing the work desde 2019. And it took me
Wow.
years to get to that moment of courage and bravery and all the things that you want to insert to actually say, okay, I'm ready. If you really look at that timeline, 2019 to 2022, that's about 3 years.
Mhm.
So it took a lot of time to really get to know myself again, to get to ask myself in a really raw and honest place of vulnerability of like, who am I? Where do I really want to go? It took a lot of time. So if you're in that space of like, pero Iris, you did it so fast. It took time. Allow yourself to take the time. And for you, it might not even take 3 years. Maybe for you, it's going to take a week, a month, 3 months, maybe by the end of the year, maybe a year, maybe in 3 years, también como yo, you're going to be in that same space where you're going to feel ready. And even then, I would challenge you with that is that you're not always going to feel ready. But it's something that I really want to share is that sometimes we have to take a risk and bet on ourselves because what you don't see on paper also and what you don't see because of the behind the scenes and only I know what I see in my life is when I left my career in 2022, I went into sales and I hated it. I hated that job. I did not like it. And I also went through an identity crisis where I was like, oh, shoot, like, who is Edie's after all of this stuff, right? Like, who am I? And but I removed myself not only from like the Bay Area, but I moved into the most farm town, agricultural, solitude place that you can think of. And I was there for about 8 months. And man, what felt like the hardest season of my life, when I look back at it, I was like, dang, like God was developing me in that moment because I needed to be stripped away from everything that I knew, from the title, from my friends, from what I felt comfortable with, to the lifestyle, to another way of living, which was a slower pace of living, to really hearing my thoughts, to hearing the deepest, darkest secrets that I was carrying because in the day of the hustle, I wasn't able to hear it. I was being developed so much in those 8 months and it felt so lonely. And I cried a lot and I screamed and man, I did so many things. But then I started getting the rhythm of it where I was like, okay, I may not really like sales, but because of that job, my world opened up to another world, which was customer success managers. And I was like, oh, I like their job. I can still do that. I kind of want to discover what that is. And while I was networking and using LinkedIn and doing all that stuff, I was connected to a mentor that eventually got me into her job and I was able to get that job. And in the meantime, too, that's when I also developed that I want to start my business. I want to help more women. So things got birthed in the season that felt the most hardest, where I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore, that I felt that my worth and my value were being questioned, that I didn't know beyond that. But I was creating a new belief system for myself of I'm more valuable than ever. And it's not because of a title. It's because I know me and I know my value. But that took time and effort too, so much where I had to redate myself again, where I had to go on solo adventures, where I had to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, that I had to look at change as a form of I'm adapting and I'm being developed here. And that took time. It took so much time. And two things can coexist at the same time where the risk can be an awesome feeling because I felt excited, but then you're going to go through those moments where it's going to feel heavy. But it goes back to choice. How do we want to choose in the movement of that? Are we worth betting on ourselves? And every morning, whether it was through positive words of affirmation or new beliefs or just sitting with myself, letting myself cry or lo que sea, I told myself, this is worth it all. I'm going to like, it's all worth it to risk it and to bet on me because no one else is going to bet on me besides me. And one day I'm going to look back when I'm 80 something years old and my grandbabies run up to me and they ask me, was it all worth it? I'm going to say, yes, it was all worth it. Even when I cried, even when I felt like a failure, even when I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore, it was all worth it because I tried. And I'm not going to live in the moments of what would have happened if I would have chosen to bet on myself or chose a different path. And yeah, the pivoting, as I've mentioned, Jessica, like my life, the past 5 years have been nothing but pivoting. And sometimes it is exhausting, but at the same time, it's all worth it. And I only say this too because ever since even leaving teaching and then leaving corporate to pursue entrepreneurship, that was another identity crisis where I was like, oh, we're going another layer. Like this means something different. And something that I do tell my clients when they're going through these movements, because they're like, pero Iris, I thought I learned the lesson. I thought, we got to the end of the tunnel and there was no more work to be done. I want to let you know something. Just like when you're in relationship with people, People don't stay the same. We shift and change all the
Mhm.
time. So why don't we give ourselves the same permission to do the same? We deserve to shift and change because guess what? Whenever I decide to be a mom, you best believe my values, my lifestyle is going to also look very different. It's not going to be the
And that's
same
gonna
of
yeah, you're
who,
gonna change
yeah,
again because yeah, and I think that
yeah,
that is something that I learned too throughout my seasons of I mean, I haven't had a lot of pivots, but just my different seasons of life, right? Where like you said something earlier about like the pandemic open your eyes to something and I think that that is so important to highlight because not about the pandemic, but more about like sometimes we don't even know what is available for us.
correct.
And then when we are exposed to that, that's where you listen to yourself because you listen to yourself. And that happened to me too. I thought working from home, I would never. I'm like, I am an extroverted person. I need to be around people. I can't work from home. Like, that's not my style. And then the moment that I experienced that during the pandemic, then I'm like, I can never go back because, like you said, is the flexibility, the being in my home and not having to like rush and drive or, you know, take a bus or anything to work. And then also allows me to be focused and on work rather than chit chatty with people or rather than like getting distracted by things or I have more control over my time and more control over like how I do things. And I ended up being more productive that way, right? And then I chose anything moving forward had to be remote for me. I also got a dog and there's no way I was going to leave him alone.
Yeah. Same. I got a dog too.
Yeah, but that's like the thing too is that so much many of us don't even know what we don't know. We don't know the options that are there. We don't know what we are able to do or even choose or like you talking about choices. We don't even know what is the list of choices that we have. And so I want to like take like a little step back a little bit because for those women that are like, okay, I know that I am unhappy or I'm not fulfilled or I'm in a space where I don't know if I should move forward. Like, how do you even know when it's time to pivot or if you're just in a rough season and like maybe pivoting is not the right move? But let's talk about like the difference between reactive pivoting versus strategic pivoting and like how do you know
Mm,
when it's time to eat or if that's even the thing the next step for you because I feel like people also wait till they're burned out or in a crisis to make a change, right? And sometimes
mhm,
that pivot could be a reaction like I'm burning out so let me just go somewhere else. But then you don't address the reasons why you burned out in the first place, so then you burn out again. So the
mhm.
moving on to the next thing wasn't the right move for you. That was just like an escape. So, yeah, I would just love to sit with that because that is something that for some of us, the way that we respond, you were talking about nervous system regulation when we're dysregulated, we can respond in different ways. So some people could be like, I'm leaving the situation, and that is the way I'm responding. Some people, I'm staying here and freezing, and that's how I'm responding. For people listening, so they're not like, okay, I'm just going to quit my job because Edie's and
Yeah,
Jessica told me to pivot, right? But then that's maybe not the right
yeah.
move for you. How would you make that more digestible and a way for people to really make that decision and make the decision that's right for them without reacting, but instead like responding.
That's so good. And I'm even going to challenge us and stretch us a little bit because I don't think there's really I know that those terms of reactive and strategic is very hot right now. But as someone who honors the human experience and has also worked with individuals with all diverse needs and learning styles, every case is going to be individualized. And what I mean by that is that you gotta honor who you are to begin with. Because I will tell you, my life, if we're gonna use those words, have been a little bit of both. I have been reactive and I also been strategic. But instead of using those words, because again, I wanna honor where you're at in your life because maybe you are in a point in your life where you're like, I can't take this anymore. I'm so burnt out that it's affecting my mental health. I just need to get out. Maybe for another person, it's like I have the time and the space to actually think of it because of my capacity. So I want to honor that because wherever you're at, it's
Hmm.
going to look different. But something where I want to make it more digestible, where we can all answer this in a very honest way, is I want you to ask yourself, where are you in your life right now? And being honest with it. And I think that's something that we don't ask ourselves enough because it's like, when are you really making the time to ask yourself that daily? where am I at in my life right now? How do I really feel about this job? How do I want to move in this job? Do I see myself here in another 3 months, in a year? And if the answer is no, because it goes back to what I shared earlier about making space for honesty. Many of us, we don't do that because we're pushing through. And I really want to invite all of us to just be honest with yourself with that question. Where am I in my life right now? And does it align with the values, with the vision, with the feeling of what you want your life to look like? If the answer is no, I don't see myself staying in this job for another 3 months, 2 months, a year, it's time to plan, baby girl. It's time to plan our exit strategy, if that's what we really want to call it. Maybe it's just not even thinking about like the exit strategy, is about what's the next step that I need to do right now then. Maybe
Mhm.
it's being like, okay, what job do I want to go to next? Maybe going onto LinkedIn and creating that profile. Maybe it's actually applying to jobs and just applying to one job in that moment. It's taking that step because before we go into action mode, we have to be honest. Because some of us, we can say, okay, I'm going to hire a coach y todo eso, but what if you don't even know what you want? Or what if you haven't even answered that basic question? How do you know that you really need a coach? What if it's like just you being honest with yourself to say, like, hey, maybe it is that I need a break. Maybe I got to talk to my husband, my partner to see if they're supporting me if I decide to leave right now. But in order for you to get to that spot,
Mhm.
got to be honest with where your life is right now. And if you're really happy in it, is it really what you want? And I guess that's where the strategy and the reactiveness can come through as
Mhm.
one wants to speak of it that. But instead of going in that direction, I really would just want to ask you in that simple way of, where am I at in my life right now? Does it align with my values? Am I really happy here? And if the answer is no, then we go on to the next step. And that next step is, what are the specifics of what you want in your life? Because if you say, I'm not happy here, I just want to be happy and fulfilled. Okay. What does that really mean though? Let's get clear with that. Let's get so specific. It's like, I really want a job where I work with a team that really values me, that I have flexibility, or if I go inside the office, they allow me to go out and, get my dentist appointments, all the stuff without me feeling guilty about it. And I want to help people. I want to help people, educators. I want to help in the health sector. I want to be in a nonprofit. Get so specific because it goes back to us women. We don't ask ourselves what we need on the daily. And even that
Mhm.
can feel really hard. So this is a good exercise because we also don't want you jumping out to a job that is not it, where you're
Mhm.
settling. Like we don't want you to settle. And I have experienced that far too well because I know what it's like to have settled for something. But also, when I look back at that moment of when I took that sales job, I didn't wait until my teacher contract ended. I took the chance when the interview came. They offered me the job. And I was like, "Ooh, this is a little risky." I'm like, am I going to leave before the school year ends? But I took the chance. And some might call it reactive, but I was like, I need this for me because I need to know that this is the life that I really want to design. And this job came to me and I'm going to trust it. And even though I did not like it,
Mm.
it gave me another chance to change and pivot and to change my mind and say, you know what, that wasn't the best choice. Or maybe I didn't like that way, but I have another choice to go into something different. So I want to welcome people with that because, again, not everybody sees the way that I do things. And I can be reactive, I can be strategic, however we want to call it. But I think the better thing to do is just ask ourselves, where are we at in our life right now? Does this align with my values? Am I happy here? And once you get that answer, it's getting specific with what it is that you really, really want. Because the clearer that you are, the clearer the path becomes of where the next action steps go. And that's when we can have momentum. That's when we can really step into intentional action because then you're not settling. You're not doing it from a place of fear. You know what to do. And that way, if you need to talk to a partner, if you're like, hey, amor, like, I am not happy here. Is there a way that I can take like a break from working? Can you support me while I maybe quit my job and look for another role or whatever it is? And if you don't have that specific like step for yourself or resource or availability or opportunity, you can plan accordingly to what works in your life right now because you're the
Mhm.
only person that knows what your life looks like and what you have available as resources. Because maybe for you, your next clear step is, okay, now that I really know what I want, I can hire the right coach, the most aligned coach, to help me in that way. Because many of us, as a coach myself, sometimes we do see people who just hire people because out of an emotional place and it's
Mhm.
not from a place of clarity. And I want a lot more of us to be able to be so honest with ourselves that our path becomes a little bit clear, to know what the intentional next steps are. And I'm not saying aligned here because alignment comes through the action.
Mhm.
Intentionality comes from the one step at a time. It's being honest with your values, your truth, and tying it all together with who makes you you and building the confidence to go forward. That's how we do it. And then also it's removing and releasing the things that don't align anymore. What habits, what beliefs, what routines. And if you're in a place where you're completely burned out, where it is no longer it, that's where we also have to be radically honest with, is this really the job that I'm willing to stay at? Is it worth it? And you know what, guys? Or you know what? I think it's very important too that many of us, we also settle with the idea that I gotta go higher. But if you're in a place where it's like, I need to just take a break, and if you're in the place to do it where you're like, I wanna just work at a coffee shop until I figure it out. What's so wrong about
That's
that? If you
okay.
have, it's okay. And you have the ability to do that because it goes back to choices. What's the lifestyle that you need right now? Because maybe for some of you, you have the savings, or maybe you don't, but you need that slower place of living and being in a place where it's going to give you the time and space to actually think again. And many of us, we rush into the decision of, I got to go into a bigger, higher paying corporate job. But again,
Mhm.
only you know your life. That's why I'm providing all the possible things to consider. Because again, at the end of the day, when I'm sharing all these examples, it's to provide evidence that you do have options. You have choices to make. And those options, if anything, seeing that you have multiple things to choose from, yes, can feel overwhelming, but at the same time, it's saying, but there's still possibility though. I can do whatever I want still. And I know that this job market is also very hard. So I want to also be very mindful of that. So again, you need to be strategic, it's about really assessing, going back to that number one question, where am I at in my life right now? Look at your finances, look at all of the pillars in your life that make your life and what's possible from that. So, and once you're ready to go forward, bet on yourself, take the risk, decide and take action on that. Because the more that we stall ourselves with fear of failing and fear of, oh my God, but what if I choose the wrong path? Baby girl, you can just do the
Change your
cycle
mind.
again and choose different and change your mind. And changing your mind is not a bad thing. Changing your mind makes you more powerful. It develops character. It gives you back your own ability to trust yourself again. Changing your mind is a good thing. And I want to normalize that for so many of us. You are not the same woman that walked this earth 6 months ago, a week ago. You are someone completely different. So it's the same thing with life. It's the same thing with how our lifestyles look, with how we want our world to look like from the inside and outside, how we want our careers to look like. If men can make choices to change their daily lives all the time, why can't we? So I want to provide that option because I'm like, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make the wrong choice. There is no such thing as the wrong choice. You're just going to learn and you're going to move forward and you're just going to choose differently. And there's nothing wrong with that because the more and more, kind of like what you said earlier too, Jessica, is it took you some time to also find the public health sector role that you're in and that you seem to be very happy with. And sometimes we all need that just time and space to figure out, what do I really want? And I think for many of us, because again, I also honor that from being a first generation, Latina and having this need and responsibility of having it all figured out, because obviously we want to make the sacrifices of our parents, the ones who came before us, worth it.
Mhm.
But what if this is the whole point? What if the whole point wasn't to have a linear path and a linear life? What if it's supposed to be allowing ourselves to be messy, to experiment, to figure out what we really want and allow ourselves to change? Because I say this también with all my heart because like your ambition is worth going after. So if you feel this feeling of I deserve better, I deserve more. Yes, I'm burnt out, but I still want that as well. Go after what you want and don't feel the need to plan for everything. Allow yourself to just plan the most necessary things in your life, like finances, all that stuff, but give yourself the chance, the wiggle room, the space to go for it, launch it, create it. apply for it, do all the things necessary to make your life happen. And yeah, because when I think about my own life, I've had to do that over and over again, ladies. It hasn't been a linear path for me either. And I'm still figuring it out, if I'm quite honest with you. But I know that when it's time for me to look back at my life, like I watch a movie, it's all going to be worth it. So I want you to also ask yourself, like, what's worth it? What will be worth it for you the moment that you are like, man, when I look back at my life, will all of this be worth it? And if your answer is no, we honor that. But if your answer is like, heck yeah, like, you know what? I'm ready to bet on myself for the first time, for the second time, for the third time, for the fourth time. I honor you. I applaud you because that's the whole point of this life. It's not for us to stay in comfortability. It's to change. It's to adapt. It's to evolve. And again, that is how we build more stronger, more rooted women who know themselves, trust themselves, most importantly. And that's how we redefine ambition. It's not about looking successful on the outside, but also looking successful on the inside and feeling it, most importantly. So I know that's a lot to be said, but if you take anything away from this, it's more of where are you at in your life right now? Asking yourself that very honestly and allowing yourself to get specific, get clear, and then take the intentional action to move forward.
I love that. And a lot of what you said, even when you were talking about that taking that job was reactive, I honestly don't think so. I think that you trusted yourself. A lot of that, like the theme today, right? Freedom, options, knowing what you want and who you are and going things. It all comes down to self trust and being able to trust yourself, betting on yourself, breaking from, the whole ideas or beliefs that things have to be a certain way and you choosing to do different because that is what's best for you in that season. And like you said, changing your mind multiple times. And when you are 90 years old looking back, you're not going to be like, oh, but my life didn't go like one straight path. Like, no, all those twists and turns is what made you who you are, is what you had to like go through. Like you were saying about like, me finally like finding my purpose or finding the career path that I wanted to be. I didn't know about public health at all when I was like doing pre-law or, going in that career
Yeah.
path. So again, it was just like I was open to something that I didn't know about. And then I was like, wow, this is actually what I want to be doing. And I mean, I may also change my mind in 10 years or 5 years, right, of what to do because, like, I also discovered coaching and it was more like I wanted to help people. So I started looking at what were ways that I can help women. And then I found coaching. And then I went through a certification program thinking I'm going to work for a company and be a coach. And then I discovered entrepreneurship and I was like, wait, I can do that? Like,
Yeah.
I can have my own coaching business. So it's just like, again, it's like you are don't even know what you don't know, or you haven't been exposed to all the choices you have in life.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
thinking that it has to be like a certain way, it's like you're limiting yourself to so much more that you are capable of, all of your potential. Because even our mind, we can't even fathom all the potential that we have because we are only limited to what we have experienced. So the more that we go out into the world and learn from other people, learn from other cultures, explore, be exposed to different spaces, be exposed to different things and people, then we start discovering like maybe there you're going to find your passion or your next hobby or your next career path. But if you stay in one place, you're never going to find those. And coming back to like freedom and choice and self-trust, then you're never going to like know that what you're meant to do is something else, or you're never going to be having all the choices that you really have because you didn't go out into the world to explore to see what was meant for you. So yeah,
Oof.
just wanted to leave
No,
with
that was
that.
so good. That was so good. And I feel like even just highlighting that part that you mentioned about not limiting ourselves. That is the biggest key thing about all of this is don't let the fear limit you and your potential and where you can be and even your mind because your mind wants to keep you safe. And so the
Mhm.
mind's doing the work that it needs to do, but allow yourself to get out of the box, to live your life and to just bet on yourself and see what you're capable of doing. That's the whole point of this life. And I love that you said that too, Jessica, because I did want to share a quote from this like show that I watch. And if
Of
anybody knows
course.
me, I low key am addicted to binging. And there was this quote that I took from this show called Lessons in Chemistry. And Elizabeth Salt, that's the name of the character. She shares that chemists look for change intentionally because just like chemical reactions, life requires adaptation. And in order to really embrace change, it is essential to grow and overcome our fears. So basically, everything that this quote is saying is allow yourself to adapt, allow yourself to change so you can overcome fear. Because just like with anything, we do have to embrace change. And so, yeah, kind of going back to what you just said too, is that the reason why I share this so much is because if it wasn't for me allowing myself to change, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't have experienced all of the incredible things that I've got to experience. Whether the high, the lows, it's been something that is still developing me. I'm still becoming. And it's been a blessing to see how life works for me and not against me when I choose myself, when I choose to
Mhm.
change, when I choose to honor my truth. So I wanted to just leave that to everybody else.
That is perfect way to end this. And before we leave, well, first of all, thank you so much. I got a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom from this. I'm like, oh my God, yes. And I know that the women, especially in this time, when you're assessing like what it is that you want to do in life and realizing whether or not you are in the path that you want to be, like take these things and they don't apply just to career. They apply to anything in your life that you may be feeling stuck in, anything that you feel uncertain about. Really take these exercises that Edie's provided us with and really reflect to see what is it that you want and was aligned with you, and trust yourself and trust that you're going to make the right decision. And even if the next move isn't the right decision, you made a decision and you trusted yourself, and that's going to lead you to the right decisions. I would love for you to share with everyone, like, how can they find you and work with you?
Oh, yes. Well, first off, thank you for having me. This has been such a wholesome plática. And even for myself, it's been very healing to just honor the experience of what I've gone through. And I hope that my story gets to help you wherever you're at. And just remember that you can do it. You are so capable. If I can do it, then you can do it. And so if you feel called, I want to invite you to my world, which you can always follow me on Instagram with Rising with Edie's or Rising with Iris, IRIS. You can also sign up for the newsletter where I go super deep. Like I have been going deeper in that newsletter. So if you would like to, be in that world of Soul Rising newsletter, you can also go ahead and subscribe to that. And you can find everything else on my Instagram with my website and just send a message, connect with me, let me know what really touched your heart. And I would love to hear from you because I love connecting with people. So Instagram is the main platform where I connect mostly with people. And I know that I also hold soul gatherings for community and everything. Pero yeah, just stay in tune with that. And most importantly, I just want to invite you to connect. I want to hear from you and I want to hear what stood out to you the most.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again, Edie's. I
Thanks.
really, really loved this conversation. It was so good. And I know it's going to help so many women.
I hope so. I really, really hope so. But thank you for having me, Jess. Like this has been great. So muchas gracias. I really feel grateful for being here.
I hope you got exactly what you needed from this episode and that at least one thing clicked. One shift, one conversation, one thing you could actually try this week. And if you're listening and thinking, okay, but how do I apply this to my situation? That's where I come in. I work one-on-one with ambitious women of color who want to grow in their career, get promoted, negotiate more money, or make the next move without burning themselves out or losing their peace. We get clear on the strategy, work through what's really getting in the way, and build the success that actually fits your life. If this episode resonated and you want support, you can find me at jessicalynn-wellness.com or DM me on Instagram. We'll chat about how I can help you thrive in your career and in your whole life. And if you know another ambitious woman of color who needs the conversation, share this episode with her. If you loved this episode or the podcast, leaving a quick rating or review helps more women find this space, and I appreciate it more than you know. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. You don't have to choose between the career and the life. You get to have both, and we're building that together. I'll see you next week. Vámonos.